Well, it's the first day of March, and we're coming out like a lion with special guests and topics. Yes, welcome back. It's This Week with Wendy, the only show where you'll find real talk about the real SoCal estate of mind. With your host, Wendy Ross, who after decades of working in real estate brokerages in Silicon Valley and Orange County, decided it was time to create something different, and she did, and thus was born Veracity Real Estate. Time was right for a renewed commitment to bespoke client advocacy at all price levels. Yes, we said all price levels, something you don't see in high-cost markets like Southern California. And through it all, she's built a company of data-driven real estate investment advisors. She sometimes calls them nerds, but we'll find out today. It's filled with truth seekers and truth tellers, and truth be told, she's got somebody here I think is going to tell it like it is. if the before show conversation is any indication here, I think this is going to be a wild one. Welcome, Wendy.
Good morning, Paul. So you've got your censor button at the ready, right?
I have got the profanity delete or whatever it is here. But Wendy, you brought some attorneys in. These are quiet, dull people.
Oh, as a rule, not so much.
Yeah.
No, they're not. And you're right. I surround myself with fantastic people. They make me look smart. But you know me, I am a nerd, and I've got a team of nerds, and we want to bring some market analysis to the residential real estate sector that you're not going to find anywhere else. And a big part of how we do it is by surrounding ourselves with people who are smarter than we are, who bring novel perspective. And that is why I'm delighted to bring our show's sponsors, Ford and Diulio, here as our guest today.
Should I ring the bell here or something?
Yeah, do you have a bell?
Ding, ding.
Wait, I had no idea there was a bell. Paul, you're holding out on me, man.
I am.
Oh, my gosh. But these guys are not only really dear friends of mine, they're also icons in the legal industry. So super excited to have them. And first up, let me introduce Brendan. Brendan Ford is one of the founding partners, of course, of Ford and Diulio. And he's developed a stellar reputation for mediating complex and often emotionally charged disputes. So Brendan was selected by Super Lawyers magazine as a Southern California super lawyer every year since 2019. So he's killing it during COVID. And he's amassed other awards too.
I want to say that one again. He's killing it during COVID. Okay.
Oh, damn it. He's going to bleep me. First to go.
You're the first to get the censor button.
Killing it during COVID. I don't know.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, the commentary. Too soon. Anyway, back to Brendan. Way more important than me and my bloopers. He's amassed several other awards. In addition to his professional legal accomplishments, Brendan, as we were talking about earlier, is an operatic tenor. He's a former musical theater actor, and he remains passionate about the performing arts. So a well-rounded human being, Mr. Ford.
And I have heard him sing over at the Center Club. This guy can really sing when he lets loose. Wow.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll save that for the end of the show, have him erupt into song. Right. Yeah, someone.
Much to Chris's chagrin.
I was going to say, Wendy, you need a theme song, and Brendan can do it.
Well, he was jamming out to the jingle on the way in.
I was a Happy Rocks there.
Oh my goodness. Well, our other partner in crime here, Chris Diulio.
Yeah, literally partner in crime.
Literally. He is the
Wait
co-founder.
a minute. Did lawyers just said partner in crime here? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're covering a lot of stuff here today. All right.
See, they're just balancing out my dingage, so I'm going to bleep them too. So he co-founded Ford and Diulio with Brendan after like 2 decades of experience representing businesses and employment disputes. A native of Orange County, he's also a member of the board of directors for the Orange County Youth Sports Foundation. And in addition, he received an accommodation medal and other awards for his service, his military service, primarily now providing legal assistance to deployed or deploying service members. So a great veteran, a great friend, a humanitarian. We love this guy in spite of himself.
Well, at least somebody does.
Hold that thought, people.
Right.
There's more to come.
Right. Show hasn't ended yet.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't even gotten warmed up, have we? Before I let you guys steal the show, which I'm counting on your doing, I'm going to do a really quick recap of what happened last week. Hence the name, This Week with Wendy.
There you go.
So last week we saw 373 new housing units come on the market, which is great, except that we needed 1,500. 585 listings went under contract and into escrow. That was up 19% from the week prior, which is crazy hot. 454 units sold. That was down 9%, but simply because we didn't have enough units to sell. We took 7 days median to sell the homes in the market last week. That was up 1 day from the week prior. So we're just bouncing along at basically no time at all.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy quick.
The part that kills me and makes my head hurt, Chris, our median price went up to $1,045,500. That was up 5% over the week prior. So the list price, and get this, the median price keeps going up, but our list price to sold price ratio is also still going up.
Wow.
So we're pricing them higher and we're still getting
And
more.
we're still going. Wow.
Right. And what's making my head hurt so much about this is last year, meaning, officially January to December, we started calculating the history of closed sales, saying, okay, if you buy this property today and one just like it sold 4 months ago, we have to add 1 to 1.5% to value for each month since that closed.
Wow.
Right? That was just our world last year, which was crazy town.
Yeah.
So I've been tracking this weekly, and never in my career did I think I'd actually have to track this weekly because monthly isn't fast enough. So what I'm seeing is that prices are now going up 1% per week. As of the first 8 whole weeks of 2022,
And there are 52 weeks in a year. This is just insane.
it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
I mean, this cannot continue, and we have spiked. The acceleration is so real. It's so hot. The only way that I can see this plateauing or reversing is if, like I said, we get 1,000 to 1,500 housing units entering the market every week. And if we don't get that, which I'm thinking we're not going to get, I'm not sure where we're going to go. I mean, it's going to become this unaffordable place like Manhattan. I mean, Orange County is becoming the Manhattan of Southern California. And the reason why I'm concerned that is exactly what's going to happen is because my other attorney friends, not these two, but I'm sure you will support this, they're telling me that divorce filings are up 200 to 300%.
It's true.
Yes, yeah. I think we all drank a lot more during COVID, and
Right.
we also realized we didn't want to be stay at home with the
Right? I don't
person
like
we were
this
with.
person
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly.
I really don't like. Well, and so presumably
But
most of
it's
those
sad,
people,
but it's true. Yeah.
well, and if they have children, then they're probably not going to split the household and move terribly far away, which means they're going to need 2 housing units for the one that they've created, which is going to make this worse. So
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know if this heat is starting to hit the market because the divorces are already happening. Thoughts?
I think they're already happening.
Okay.
I think that is part of it. But
Okay.
again, we've constantly had this supply issue here in the
Yeah.
market. I mean, that's something we've been dealing with for a long time.
It has been.
We've been saying it's unsustainable for a long time. At least I have been, and,
Yes.
and I know you have. And so at what point is it no longer not sustainable?
I don't know, as long as we have cheap money. And again, hearkening back to the conversation before we went on the air,
Right.
we're talking about the political crisis in the Ukraine. And if there are issues there that put pressure on our economy and we increase the cost of money, hopefully that will cool things off.
Right. Well, I think this. Rates are going to go up. I mean,
must.
the Fed's been very clear about that. It has to happen.
Yeah.
The international crises complicate that, but I think the Fed's sort of hands are tied. Rates are going up.
Yeah.
I mean, how much and how much it cools things off. I mean, I wish if I knew, I'd make an appropriate bet.
We literally need 1,000% more inventory.
Right.
Right.
1,000% people. I've never in my 20+ year career said those words out loud.
Well, I read this in a fantastic newsletter recently.
Oh, tell me about it.
But, as you point out, the challenge is that you have people who are not willing to sell. I mean, in my own world, I know people, they say, I have this house, it's appreciated tremendously. I have all this equity, but where do I go? So I sell it to what end, kind of thing. Like it's just so hot and everything's rising so much. They're holding on to their inventory,
Right.
as you pointed out.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you've got the divorce rate. You've got political pressures in terms of not building new housing. You just have a lot of these factors that have kind of come together all in this perfect storm that have created
Exactly.
a lot of upward pressure on prices. And then beyond that, we still have low interest rates, but inflation is becoming this big issue. And so trying to navigate an already high inflation rate with raising interest rates, which I agree with Chris needs to happen and will
absolutely.
happen,
Yeah. Yeah, no
is a fine line to navigate.
It's crazy because, as you said, I mean, we already had this issue of shrinking inventory and putting this pressure on the market. And then the more it shrank, the more people went, hey, wait, I can't sell and put my house on the market, which accelerated the shrinking of the market. It's like, at what point does it go supernova?
Right.
Right.
And I wish I knew, but that's why we're here talking every single stinking week. And people are like, what do you have to talk about every week? You'd be surprised.
Yeah, a lot.
There are a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
There are so many, and Paul, to your point, no, I just don't have interior decorators and appraisers and home inspectors. I don't know what you were thinking. I mean, the home is pretty much everyone's greatest asset.
Right.
And you've seen the median price here is over $1 million in Orange County. We blew past LA County. LA County with Brentwood and Westwood and Malibu. we've blown past them in terms of median price. What the holy hell? I mean, this is insane.
Bleep.
Anyway,
Paul, bleep.
I miss them. She does it so often, I can't keep up with her.
it's the Wendy bombs. Just wait, the carpet bombs will come. Anyway, enough about me and my views on the market. Let's talk a little bit about Ford and Diulio and what they're doing. So, Brendan, to you.
Yes.
What is mediation, and why should a homeowner know about it before they actually get into a real estate dispute?
Great question. First of all, thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a delight to be here, and it's always great to hang out with my best friend here and talk about things that we care about. So thank you very much for having us. In terms of mediation, mediation is a wonderful tool. Broadly speaking, it's a method of dispute resolution in which a neutral third party, who's the mediator, helps two or more people who are in a dispute come to some kind of negotiated resolution. It's a superior method of dispute resolution for at least three reasons. First of all, it's much faster. A lawsuit that involving a car disclosure or anything like that in a residential real estate context can take years.
And for those of you who are listening, CAR means California Association of Realtors.
Yes, I was going to use that in another context, but you're right. California Association of Realtors. So those types of disputes can go on for years. You know, your average lawsuit can go anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So mediation can take place in a day. It's much cheaper. A mediator costs, a good mediator costs a few $1,000s. A good lawyer costs hundreds of dollars per hour, and you multiply that over months and years.
Not that you two know anything about that.
Not at all. And then third, it's a lot more efficient and effective. We get to the heart of the matter right away instead of hurling accusations and so forth. It's like, what's the real problem here? And how do we all tackle it? Party A, party B, and the mediator all put their heads together. And so what's nice about it is that instead of this confrontational, it's we all sit on the same side of the table, and the problem is the thing on the opposite side of the table.
Wow.
And so we all look together to how do we resolve that. And so it takes away a lot of the steam that may exist in a traditional litigation where
Takes
it's
the heat out
A
of
versus B. Exactly. Now, in the residential context, there's one thing. I'm sorry, were you going to ask a question? Or?
No, I was just going to say that's a brilliant analogy.
Oh, thank you. So in the car context, I will say California Association of Realtors is to actually be commended for their views on mediation. And it's very specific to the home buying context. As you know, obviously, every purchase and sale agreement is done on a car form.
Right.
Or it should be.
Or
I
should
have
be.
seen some that are not.
That cocktail napkin didn't work?
It's a horrible idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are committing
Yeah,
real estate malpractice
No,
if you do not use a car form.
we literally had one recently. It was a one page that somebody had bought at like Kinko's or something, and it was just like a sale agreement. And don't use that.
Well, that's because they weren't using a licensed person, correct?
Right.
I'm certain that was the backstory.
Well, and that worked out so well.
No,
Right.
it turns out it didn't. By the way.
Yeah.
Right. The penny pound kind of thing. It's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Well, people forget that ignorance of the law, including real estate transacting law, is not protection from it.
Exactly. So for the California Association of Realtors, that form is fantastic for two reasons. One is if there is a dispute, it contains what's called an attorney's fees provision, which basically says, if party A and party B get into a fight over that, and party A wins, they get to recover or apply to recover the attorney's fees that they expended in order to get into this fight. With one really, really, really important exception.
Love the caveat.
The caveat is if you do, and this was
As lawyers, we love the caveats.
we love the caveats.
This is
too.
where we live.
This is where we live in the gray, right? If it's black and white, that's easy. You don't need us. But it's the gray where it gets interesting. But the form says that if you do not first go to mediation before going to your lawsuit, you waive that right. And that's a right that, as I was saying, a 2-year lawsuit, you're talking you can forfeit. And there was a reported case in the last decade where that exact thing happened. They raced to the courthouse. Instead of doing it, it was a car form, and they sought tens of thousands of dollars in recuperated attorney's fees. And the trial court said, no, the form means what it means.
And let me guess, they said, we never read the form.
Correct. And then they appealed, and the appellate court agreed and said, no, the form says what it says. You've got to do mediation first. And if you don't get your attorney's fees.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it.
And that's really so important because a lot of times the fees can be the tail that wags the dog.
Sure.
If you're going to litigate for 2 years and spend $200,000 in attorney's fees, you may have only been fighting over $200,000.
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, let's say you won, but it's a false victory.
Exactly. And I love how you were talking about your enthusiasm about mediation and cars, embracing of it. People, and your analogy, saying in mediation, we sit on one side of the table and we put the problem on the other side, and collaboratively, we figure out how to solve that problem. And it seems to me, again, hearkening back to our conversation before we went live, that so many attorneys just want to crush the other one into the ground, and it becomes about being right. It becomes about winning or losing and being the victor or the victim. And that's not what, that doesn't benefit all parties.
No, in fact, first of all, you're right. A lot of attorneys, it's that old adage, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
So that's it's like go, go, go. And sometimes, and one of the reasons that we started our firm is that, that can be wonderful for the attorneys. Well, I shouldn't say World War III, that may be but
too
I
soon.
know, okay. When you want protracted, scorched earth litigation, that can be great for the attorneys, but that can be terrible for the clients. To Chris's point, you say, I spent, would you spend $500,000 to win 100?
Absolutely
No.
not.
Right. And yet people say, by God, I'm going to do whatever is possible to destroy and grind this other person into
It's about
dust.
the principle.
Right.
Whenever a client says that, we quickly disabuse them. It's
Right.
not about the principle.
It's never about the principle,
Right.
and it's always about money. And so,
Yeah.
but because what ends up happening is they're fighting like, they're on the cast of Les Mis on top of the barricade until
It didn't work out well.
No, it didn't work out. And then they get the first bill and they go, whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, I care about this, but not that much.
Yeah. Can you just wrap this up now, please? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there are so many people that don't understand, too, in residential real estate, quite unlike commercial and quite unlike, as you guys can speak to, other commercial business disputes, so much emphasis is placed on good faith.
Yes.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
much, yeah, right. In residential car and attorneys and mediators and everyone who is involved in the residential transaction starts with the presumption that the layperson who is buying a home is not as sophisticated as the person who is buying or selling a business or.
And it's true, but that presumption's baked in.
Right. So the presumption is baked in, and people, I think, forget, especially if, lawyers are buying and selling homes and lawyers are fighting with lawyers and then they're lawyering up as lawyer on lawyer. I think they forget that the resolution is probably going to be one that is less fact-based and black and white than they expected going into it, because good faith matters.
Right, and we always refer that in the legal world, we refer that as equity. There's the law, which is you can or can't do something. Equity is fairness.
Right.
What's fair?
Right.
What should the right result be, regardless of sort of some black or white? And to Brendan's point again, there's that gray area, and that gray area is fairness, and that's what's going to dictate the gray area.
Right. Was there deliberateness in whatever caused the dispute? Was it something that was egregious? Was it something that someone could have reasonably known?
Yeah, good faith mistakes.
Right.
People miss something. You didn't check a box. You didn't. Something didn't get disclosed that should have. But it wasn't that big of a deal. We're going to look at fairness. You're going to look at equity.
And I'll tell you, in terms of, to piggyback on that point, the good faith and the reputation of the person with whom you're dealing, like a real estate professional or the attorneys that you do, make a huge, huge difference in those kind of issues.
Yes.
Because that forms the prism through which you view the conduct, right?
Yes.
So you see this, we see this in jury
Right.
trials,
All
right?
the
Juries
time.
come in all the time, and basically they put a black hat on one side and they put a white hat on the other. And if the white hat is on, then it's an innocent mistake. You forgot. Well, I know Wendy. She would never miss something like that intentionally. If you have the black hat, I know she was trying to pull the wool over my eyes, and she was to pull one over to get me in order to do it.
Exactly.
Exact same conduct.
Exactly.
But now, whether it's a lie or an innocent mistake, depends entirely on that prism through which you see the person. And so that's why having a good reputation, having good interactions with both, your clients and with other agents,
Oh, yes.
your reputation is everything.
It
and
is.
so
You know, is
and the same is here. So that's what the good faith issue is so critical in
It's paramount.
It
It's
is.
paramount.
It is.
And I train my team on that. And I don't train them to be artificial about this. I say authentically engage with the professional on the other side and be positive and supportive, because we're all collaborating to the same end, ideally, right? We want to get a fair deal for both parties. We want to get them through escrow and closing escrow and make it really clear, demonstrate that you're there to support the other professional. And that is so useful, because later in the process, if something does get missed or goes awry, they don't assume there was deliberateness. They say, oh, this person has been so cooperative and helpful and professional and on the ball, let's figure it out.
Exactly.
So it de-escalates things before they become a dispute.
And that ends up benefiting their clients ultimately, which is what we all want to do.
Absolutely. I think clients often misunderstand when I talk about the importance of, you want to hire my team because we play nicely with others. It's massively important.
As Brendan always says, we play nice in the sandbox, and
Right.
the same applies to even us as lawyers. Brendan's very good at the mediation. If maybe that's not the right route, and you need to be a little bit more forceful. That's kind of more my side, which is why we're good partners. But you still have to be nice and professional.
Right.
You never know when you're going to need somebody to assist you in the future. You never know if you're going to deal with somebody in a future transaction.
I have to
there's
imagine
no reason to be hyper aggressive
or to be
confrontational,
nasty
right?
or condescending.
That's the worst.
One of the, obviously we're all here. Referrals are everything, right? I'll tell you some of the most professionally gratifying referrals that we've ever gotten. We've gotten on probably a half dozen occasions. We've gotten cases referred to us from lawyers that we were against in heated litigation on a prior case.
I've heard that about you, and I thought that was wildly impressive.
It's so gratifying because that means they thought what does it say, right? They think we're smart, they think we're ethical, and they think that we're going to do a good job for their client. And obviously we weren't jerks and we weren't burning bridges.
I say, we got a good result. We were forceful. We advocated for our client, but we were never jerks about it.
Boom, there it is. And that is our job as well. Our job is to advocate for our clients. And a big part of that is to be as effective as we can on the front end and make sure that all their ducks in a row and all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted. And so I'm going to segue then into, speaking of starting well before a transaction. So how important is it for homeowners, Chris, to have an estate plan?
Sure. So that's crucial. And this is something that, sadly comes up, more often than we'd like. We do have a lot of homeowners, for a variety of reasons, are aging, and
aren't we all?
Well, I
Some
guess
of us faster than others.
well,
Really.
I'm in denial about it, but that's my own issue. We're aging. We're all going to pass at some point, and the largest asset, to your point earlier, for most people in Orange County is their house.
Right.
If you've bought your house 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's appreciated a lot.
A lot.
I mean, it's appreciated a lot this week.
Yeah.
So, over the last 20, 30 years.
Don't hold your breath, darling. It's going up.
Exactly. And so, for a lot of people, if you don't own real estate, you probably don't really need an estate plan unless you have some sort of other extenuating issues, unless you own part of a company or something like that. I mean, if you just have a large bank or investment account, you can tell the bank, or, you can designate who your beneficiary is. On your life insurance, you can designate who the beneficiary is. You can't really do that on your deed when you buy a house. And so that house, if you pass without an estate plan, it's open.
Right.
It doesn't automatically transfer to anyone. Now, we have a process that you can go through. It's called probate, and that's a court. It's its own court that's set up that just deals with these sort of really sad issues.
And I don't think people understand that the tax to the heirs is based upon the market value of the property, not the equity position.
It's based on the market value of the property, as well as the cost that you're going to pay for attorneys to probate that. And here's really the saddest thing. Is that process takes time. So let's say, your parent or grandparent passes and they leave you and your brother a property. You don't automatically get it. In fact, you have to run to court before you can even list it, right? Because you don't have the authority to do that. Because
it's technically not yours.
In fact,
not yours yet.
And we see that. I mean, you shouldn't even sign a listing agreement.
Right.
And so that's sort of a separate issue. But you have to get approval from the court. That's going to take time. Then once you sell it, you need approval from the court to sell the property, and then you need approval from the court to distribute those funds. In real terms, you may think, sad your parent passed, but hey, at least we get this house, and I'm going to get the equity. I'm going to split it with my sibling. You may not get that money for like 18 months.
Right.
It's going to sit in escrow. Now, escrow's happy about that,
Sure.
but you're really not happy. That money's just going to sit there.
And you've missed all that market acceleration.
You've missed all that market acceleration. It's tied up. You're paying for an attorney to do all this process. And at the end of the day, you could have solved that by having a very simple estate plan.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the most complicated thing in
Sure.
the world. But to Brennan's point, you spend a little bit of money at the front end. These estate plans are not that expensive, but it's going to avoid this huge process on the back end.
No one knows more than I do. Trust me.
No, it's horrible. Yeah, I agreed. I mean, there's a statutory requirement that you wait 4 months after you get. So it takes a while to just get the letters of administration from the court. That's a process and a half. But once
and that's just so you can list and sell the house.
Do something. So now they're saying it's still not yours, but you, designee, can now operate on behalf of the estate. And once that happens, now you're like, okay, good, we're golden.
No.
The law says 4 months minimum because you have to give notices to everybody but the Pope.
Right.
Especially the tax authorities.
Especially
Yes.
the FTB.
You must let them know.
Yes.
And the taxing authorities are very, very eager, and they get all kinds of notice, and so they want to be sure that they get theirs if
Their
they're
pound
already
of flesh.
outstanding. Exactly.
Of course.
Great Shakespearean reference.
No,
but
I'm here to help.
Thank you.
And you know the timing. We've touched on this. You know, we all went through COVID.
Right.
And just like there is a backlog in inventory, there was a significant backlog in court actions. You know, courts were closed for a long period of time.
Exactly my question. Yeah.
Right. And then when they were open, it's really reduced. You know, they had these sort of skeleton crews. You weren't processing things at the same time, and they had a huge backlog.
And weren't they prioritizing more critical cases?
Well, of course. I mean, you know, unfortunately, people have a constitutional right on a criminal case.
Right.
You know, you have a right.
That's
you know,
what I thought they
if
would take
somebody's
precedent.
if somebody's sitting in jail. And they've got a right. You have a right to a speedy trial. You know, I read that somewhere. And
Sounds
so,
familiar.
And so the courts have an obligation. You don't have a right to a speedy probate.
Right.
You don't have a right to a speedy resolution of your contract dispute. You don't have a right to a speedy resolution of the
your
real
real
estate
estate dispute.
Yeah,
Right.
that fell apart.
Exactly.
You don't have that right. And
Or
so,
your divorce.
And or your divorce. So those are going to all be sort of the lowest tiered things. You know, the criminal stuff's always going to take place.
So we're
And
still seeing a backswell of this,
we're
right?
still seeing a backswell. It's way less than it was.
Good.
But we're still dealing with it, and so we're still dealing with timelines that were even they
They were onerous to begin with.
they weren't good to begin with, right? Let's be honest. In 2019, we did not have speedy justice in the civil system, and
You heard this from an attorney.
yeah, you're right. I mean, we do our best. Now, you know, people would say, well, attorneys are probably the problem, and there's a variety of reasons for that, but it got worse, and so we're getting out of it a little bit, but it's still worse. And so, if you own real estate, you know, get yourself a really good real estate professional to help you with the transaction.
Pick me.
And then, you know, get yourself a good insurance broker, and
Totally.
once you have it, get yourself an estate plan.
Yes.
You're doing it's going to cost you a very, very small amount of money, and the anguish and heartache and expense to your heirs that you're saving them is exponential. But especially because we're talking about huge assets now.
You are, and it's conspicuous. Like you
Yes.
said, there's a bank account, there's stocks or whatever. Those aren't conspicuous.
Exactly.
But your heirs have seen your house.
Right.
They've been there. They've had
And-
Thanksgiving there.
And they read the newsletters and listen to the podcast, and they know it's worth a lot of money.
Right.
And they would kind of, you know, again, you don't want anything to happen to
Sure.
your parents or your
Sure.
grandparents.
Well, and aside from the obvious greed aspect, not that our families are ever very greedy, if I had $1 for every time I took unmarried couples out to look at houses they were buying together and begged them to set up some sort of estate plan, to do something in advance. And I try to remind them, like, I don't ever want anything to happen to you,
Right.
but God forbid one of you is hit by a bus and the other person's going to be stuck dealing with your grieving family.
Right. You know, we keep using the example of the parent or grandparent, but
It can be anyone.
we don't know. None of us know.
Right.
And so it could happen any
My
time.
husband
and you
died
should be
41
prepared.
days after we were married.
That, you know,
I mean-
very sorry still.
No one knows better than me.
Right.
I know.
mean, it's like, ooh,
Yeah. And just to make it even worse, to your point, how about an unmarried couple with children?
right.
And the children are relying on that money
Yeah.
in order that probated money for that property in order to fund their schooling and their expenses and so forth. And now you're waiting 18 months. And it's
Okay, kids, if we haven't scared you into an estate
well,
plan
that's
yet,
why
I don't
that-
know what will.
Right. I'm saying, you know, you're really doing a tremendous disservice to your family, to your children, to anyone that you love if you don't get an estate plan.
And as a corollary to that, if you're married, you really should have a prenuptial agreement. That's probably a different conversation.
And I
for
just
a
want to
different
highlight
day.
here, people, that these gentlemen don't do family law or trust in estate planning law. That's not their wheelhouse. They're just saying it's important. They deal with
Trust
the
us.
aftermath. Oh my goodness. Well, okay, so we've talked about the importance of getting a trust or an estate plan set up. I've talked about what can happen. Because crazy stuff comes up. So then there's the in-between ground. So let's just say that someone hasn't died yet, but they're older, and they've got this real estate asset. What could possibly go wrong with that?
Well, you know, believe it or not, there are some nefarious people out there in the world, and they take advantage of individuals, and sadly, more often than not, in this context, we see it happening to somebody who's a little older, maybe elderly, maybe not, as active or as in communication with their family or their friends. And, we've seen several occasions that we've had to litigate where this person, whether it's a caretaker or a friend or an associate, who candidly, I'll just be frank, takes advantage of and convinces the homeowner to sign over their property.
Wow.
And
they actually do it.
And they do it, or at least they supposedly do it. We'll get to that in a second, because usually this is not done publicly. Usually it's not a recorded deed. And so imagine the shock. Your parent has died. You're sad, but they own this wonderful house, and at least you're going to have that and sell it. And then this person shows up with a signed, notarized deed that you've never heard of.
But it was unrecorded.
And you've never seen it. It's never recorded. And they're like, okay, I'm going to go. I just need you to know I'm going to go record this deed now. That is, it's a shocking, scary situation.
It makes my head hurt and my heart hurt.
It makes your head hurt. And so we've had to deal with a number of those cases.
Yes.
You have options.
Thank goodness.
You should definitely immediately contact an attorney.
Like you guys.
Like us. And we've, fortunately, we've been very successful in these cases of undoing these types of transactions.
Thank God.
But they're difficult.
They are.
And going back to, an estate would probably avoid some of that.
Sure.
But, if somebody's going to take advantage of someone, there's things they can do. And signing over the deed is a problem, but that's not really the only way people are taken advantage of.
Right. I mean, to Chris's point, you're dealing with a he said, she said thing, and one of them's passed. So all you have is, you say, Dad would never have done this. This was an actual case that we had, Dad would never have given the deed. Well, Dad's gone.
Yeah.
And then we only have this person who has this signed notarized deed saying, oh, no, he wanted to, because he wanted to take care of me or something.
And in the absence of evidence to the contrary.
Right. Exactly. It's very challenging.
They're very challenging cases, and that's why, you need attorneys who are going to really dig in. I mean, those are, at the outset, those are not easy cases, because you have to comb through documents, emails, financial transactions to try and tell this story.
To build a story, right.
To build a story that, and we're storytellers as litigators.
Yes.
You have to tell a story.
Yes.
It's convincing a judge or a jury that your version of events is right, and it's got to make sense. It's got to be a story. You've got to have the actors, why they did this, what they did. But that takes a lot of work. I mean, it takes, a year and a half, 2 years to put together the evidence to tell that story. And that's really combing through bank records, combing through emails and texts, and really sort of everything you can to try and recreate what exactly went down, because the key witness isn't around.
Right. They're no longer here.
You have to show circumstantial evidence to show that he or she would never have agreed to that transaction, or that you procured it through fraud.
Right. Or that they were unaware or
Exactly.
Or that they're unaware.
And, that's...
There is a particular scenario I want to ask you about, but
Sure.
first we're going to take a really quick break, right, Paul?
Absolutely. Because we want to point out to the world, if they haven't figured it already, that Wendy surrounds herself with some really great strategic partners, including their guest today here, Ford and Diulio, the sponsor of the show. Ford and Diulio is an Orange County-based boutique litigation firm with experienced attorneys from the big law firms. So what you're getting is people who really know what they're doing, if you haven't figured that out already. The partners who founded Ford and Diulio on the concept of aligned interests. There's something radically different, where their success is tied to your success, where they're rewarded for being efficient and effective, not just dragging it out, and where they engage in the relentless pursuit of their clients' goals, whether in litigation, mediation like we're talking about today, or even a trial, should it come to that. If that's what you're looking for, if that's who you want fighting for you, find them at FordDiulio.com. Just like it sounds, FordDiulio, FordDiulio.com. All right, Wendy, do I get to ask a question of these guys here? I think every question we ask will take 20 minutes, though. These guys are like...
Me first. I have one more question that's really important, then it's all you, Paul.
Okay.
You know I love you. So these guys know, and a lot of people don't know, that my late husband was a Marine veteran, and he was passionate about Veterans Legal Institute. He and I were huge advocates. We adore Antoinette Balta. We think she walks on water. She's an angel on earth. And I'm delighted that you are a veteran, also really involved with VLI. So, of course, thank you for your service. Thank you for your ongoing commitment. And I want you to share with me details about a story that Antoinette was telling me about a woman who was a victim of what I thought was elder financial abuse.
No, absolutely. I'll let Brendan handle that, or at least start with it. But I do want to point out, Antoinette's a dynamo. That's the way I describe her to everyone. I mean, she's just great, and the work she does is amazing. And we're really, really happy and proud of our ability to fund that veterans legal work.
Yeah, I just can't thank you enough. Those veterans deserve so much advocacy.
Yes, I saw in a speech a while back the notion that we as a society, as Americans, have a sacred trust, which I love that phrase.
Yes, that possible.
Yes.
Right. Well, and to Brendan's point, the idea behind the program was perhaps noble. It was help people become more energy efficient.
Sure.
And we, the government, the county, is going to step in and be really the collector of these funds.
Don't let them sit in drafty cold homes. I get it.
No,
Right.
But the notion that this money for improvements is now part of your property taxes and collected by the county, which has the most extreme means of collecting.
Right.
The government always does.
Right.
And so it becomes problematic for many, many reasons. First of all, because it's a super priority lien, your mortgages are no longer eligible for Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, so they now lose their eligibility for those government protections that exist.
Which is sort of akin to the FDIC for deposits. I mean,
Correct.
all the federal protections are then wiped out.
Are wiped out
So-
when you get into
So the
this,
government
which
program you got into wiped out your government protection for your loan.
Right.
Right. When it limits your ability to finance or refinance, right? Because so many of the loans are under these federal programs. There are ability to get, as you well know,
Yes.
there are lots of loans outside of those programs, but you're really limiting your market now.
Of course.
So that's an issue number one, and they're supposed to conduct an ability to pay analysis, but nobody does. Yeah. And the worst
Brendan
part
likes to
is,
use the supposed. Yeah,
right.
There's a lot of things
There
people
are a lot of things that are
supposed to do.
supposed to be done, but there's no analysis. This woman was living in a tiny thing. She incurred $75,000 worth of additional things to her home. She can never repay that.
The woman on a fixed income,
The woman on a fixed income of Social Security and her husband's military death benefits.
which is probably a couple grand a month at
exactly.
best.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
God.
And so her property taxes, I think, quintupled, and so now that she can't afford her home anymore. And the PACE program doesn't care because they get $1, right? So the county
Right.
forecloses on it. They say, I don't care.
unpaid property
For
taxes.
unpaid property taxes. So now they get foreclosed on. PACE doesn't care because they're guaranteed their money, right? And so that's all they do is see if there's enough equity in the home to cover whatever that is. If it gets wiped out and you get kicked on the curb,
So
too
instead
bad,
of being
so sad.
instead of being cold in your drafty old home, now you're homeless and you're on the street.
correct.
Right, but it's been upgraded, and so now it's
the
been
next guy's
foreclosed,
gonna
and the next
benefit
guy's going
from
to
it.
get
Correct.
a much nicer house.
How is that not despicable? How is that
Well,
legal?
it is. I mean, and that's why we're very happy that we
Yes.
filed a very extensive lawsuit, and Brendan can speak to that,
Right.
because this is despicable, and this is something that
Everyone needs to be aware of this.
Yes,
Talk
and
to your
it-
older family members and make sure.
pay attention to what counties that you're in, because, for example, LA has really taken charge on this because they have sued these various PACE providers for predatory lending practices,
Terrific.
essentially, and they've shut it down. So you no longer are eligible to get a PACE loan in LA.
Fabulous.
Unfortunately, it's the PACE program is administered by this very weird kind of group, this loose affiliation of counties, and so it's on a county by county basis. Orange County still has it, but
I thought you were going to say Lucifer there for a minute. I'm like,
loose affiliation, yes. Bleep that.
Got it. Half of this show is not going to show up in the final version. I'm
Okay,
just
yeah,
telling
no,
you.
that's good.
to be like redacted FOIA documents. There's could be a lot of black lines.
And there's an and. Okay, that's not classified. But bottom line is, we filed a 173-page complaint against the county, against the loose association, against all of the contractors that defrauded this poor woman, against PACE, against everybody and their brother. And it's still in its early stages, but we are going to fight the good fight and do everything that we can to get this woman justice, because she was wronged in a horrible, horrible way. And to have lost her husband, a military veteran, and then have to go through this, in her, twilight of her life.
It's unconscionable.
She's in her
It is.
80s. It's just
It's wrong.
And she's spending her 80s wondering, is today the day that I'm going to get kicked to the curb?
where am I going to live?
Right, and circling back, that's just unfair.
Right.
That's there's no fairness there. There's no good faith there. I mean, there was supposed to be this analysis, but apparently the only analysis was, did she have equity
Right.
that we could put a lien against?
Right.
That
And
was the only analysis.
That was that. All right, Paul. I give up. I'm done. My head hurts.
I
question.
was only looking for a story. I didn't know I was going to get the story. That's all. Because they say they're storytellers. I said they must have heard some great stories, and I was going to ask for one. You gave me one there.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, there you go. So yes, Antoinette and I are on the caption, and Chris, and we're all working together to do well for this
Right,
poor lady.
and that's why we're happy to talk about it, because as Brendan mentioned, LA County has really shut down the program, but it took lawsuits against the county to get there. And so we're hopeful that we could, through our own humble work, achieve the same thing here in Orange County.
And it's so bad that we're at UCI. UCI Law has an entire clinic dedicated to PACE litigation, suing because there are an entire clinic, and she's working with us.
And good point. Yeah, we were working with UCI students at UCI.
Go UCI.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
So this is a team effort. So we have 3 parts to the team. We have our firm, and we've been working on it. Then we also have Antoinette and a gentleman named Doug Tennant, who's been fantastic, and we've been working together at Veterans Legal Institute. And then finally, we have a Professor Stacy Tutt at UCI Law, who's the head of the PACE litigation clinic. And when I first got into this and I got her folder, there are so many lawsuits and so many horrible stories, and each one of them is some variant of this.
Right.
Someone who is...
They're each tragic.
They're all tragic. It's all a minority, low income, or elderly, and or taken advantage of, and now facing in their twilight years being homeless.
How many layers of abuse? It's ridiculous.
It's outrageous.
It is, and just to circle back, you talk to your parents, grandparents. We have a hard time. Probably have a hard time getting young, educated people to read the forms that they're signing, and so the idea that some sort of retiree is reading all this and really truly understanding,
Absolutely.
it's not plausible.
It's not written in readily understood language,
No.
and you lack the context.
Yeah, right. And you don't really understand the repercussions. All you're hearing is, I'm going to get solar panels and new windows. That's nice.
For free. That's great.
Right.
I love this.
And so, at the risk of sounding somewhat self-serving, the whole point of this.
4th of July, and that was a big driver of what city I wanted to live in.
By the way, I can verify that was a huge part of his decision.
Legal and safe and sane fireworks.
Legally and completely in compliance.
But it's not quite the 4th of July without a pool party, a barbecue, and a couple fireworks.
Okay,
That's
and
true.
because I'm afraid of the answer, I'm going to give this question to you. Chris Diulio, what is your most treasured possession?
Oh, I'm not really a material person. It'd be easy to say one of my many vehicles, which are all obnoxious, but it's my positivity. I'm an eternal optimist.
You are. It's true.
I am. Yeah.
Wow, that wasn't what I expected, and thank you for not making us believe
Well, I would
you.
like to answer that question as well,
Mr.
if
Ford.
I may.
Yes, please.
I will say, because I was thinking about this while Chris was talking, the most valuable thing in my life is the wonderful circle of friends and family that I have that support me and love me and whom I love dearly. So there you go. Present company included.
We love you back.
We love you
man.
back,
We
exactly.
There
do.
you go.
I couldn't imagine being law partners with anyone but Brendan. I think we complement each other very well. We have a lot of things we agree on, a lot of things we don't, but I think together we're a very good team.
And
Agreed.
that's what makes it a great team.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make you collaborate on this. Collaboratively, what do you think is collectively your best achievement to date? What is your greatest achievement?
I know. I think it's our Kentucky.
Well, I'd go a different.
Okay,
I'd go a
please go
slightly
ahead.
different direction. We started the firm in 2015 with you, me, and a couple of laptops.
Oh, that's a good point.
and here we are, 2022 through COVID,
Right.
and we're still thriving. And so building a business, I think, is our greatest
I agree.
achievement.
You're not
We had-
just thriving. I mean, you're super lawyers. You're getting accolades through all of it.
Yeah, but we weren't getting accolades in 2015 when it was me, Chris, 2 little cheapo things, no money, no clients, no nothing. We practiced door law. Whoever walked through the door, we can handle it.
Yes, we are.
It wasn't, yeah.
Do you do Eskimo rights in the South Pole? And Chris is like, well, having done a lot of these, I'm sure I can help you. Colonizing Mars? Having done a lot of these, I can help you. So yes, door law.
Can't give away all the secrets.
No, I know. Yes,
Lord.
the magic of door law.
Oh, gosh.
No, but luckily, we were very, very lucky that we immediately had clients who just knew us from our reputations, and it was kind of scary whenever you start a business because you don't know. And in the legal business, you really can't. You're not supposed to take clients with you from your existing firms, and we went through great strides not to do that. But we put out our shingle, and immediately we're getting phone calls and emails from people who wanted to hire us, and all of our work although we're happy to join this podcast. You don't see us on TV or commercials. You haven't seen my picture on the back of a bus or Brendan on a billboard. Our work comes from referrals. It comes from professionals who know us, or attorneys who know us, or former clients or opposing counsel who've interacted with us. And when they've come across somebody who needs legal work, they refer them to us. Because they've dealt with us and they know we're going to do a really good job.
And your point that you've just made is part of why I was so honored that you're willing to endorse my podcast, because we are friends. We're professional friends. We refer business back and forth, and you don't, as a rule, advertise. So it means a lot to me that you're willing to put your name on my show, and even better yet, be here and participate.
We're proud of the opportunity.
Yes.
All right. Well, before we wrap it up, if you would please tell the lovely people out there, because they're all going to be wanting to reach you, how can they reach you?
Well, they can reach us by phone at 714-450-6830, or they can email us. It's our first initial last name, so I'm B. Ford, and he's K. Diulio at FordDiulio.com.
Right, and our website, www.forddiulio.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
You'll be back. I won't let you say no. And for those of you listening, please join us next week. We're going to sit down with the Alzheimer's Association to continue this conversation about the elderly. And we're going to talk about the future care of things and aging in place. And any of you who want to reach me, you know how to grab my website too, realveracity.com, or just listen to our podcast wherever you most like to listen to podcasts. Have a great week.
Great. Thanks again.